Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg, and along with my colleagues, Claire, Serby, and Eric, we represent Galen Medical Technologies. And we've come to discuss not only the product development, but also the company development, centered around our product, Step, which induces, again, therapeutic hypothermia in patients to protect you from damage to your body after you've suffered traumatic brain injury or cardiac arrest. And we've gone through this this development strategy in 3 different stages. We have first a product development strategy where we're going to be working with the lab that came up with the initial technology, Dr. Lance Becker's lab at the University of Pennsylvania. Currently, we're planning on licensing the mechanical components of their device. What we'll be doing is working with their lab in order to develop the control system, to understand how we can get the feedback between the saline that's injected and the temperature readouts that come from the patient. We'll also be working with our product design, with our marketing in the beginning stages, trying to figure out where we can go to work on clinical trials. In our next phase, we'll be looking at the regulatory process, the filing for our IDE and our pre-market approval with the FDA, getting feedback from these groups, also getting feedback from the groups that we're working with for the clinical trials, looking at how we can improve the device, what they're going to want out of the device when it comes to market, and understanding where we can go from there. And then finally, we'll be looking at our a final stage where we will be working on our final product launch, getting our ongoing operations online, also what we're going to be outsourcing, our manufacturing and our distribution, as well as finalizing our market analysis and determining what other markets we can move into, what we should be doing first. We've planned this out in terms of a timeline. In our initial phase, we're looking at setting up our R&D department, because that's really going to be the core of our industry, is what we can finish up, add on to Dr. Becker's product. We're looking at initially finishing up the sort of proof of concept research, showing the effectiveness of induced therapeutic hypothermia. We'll also be looking then at starting to develop the product in terms of getting it ready for clinical trials. We'll have a milestone when we have an actual working product with not only Dr. Becker's prototype, but also our control system. This goes along well with their plans, as their engineers expect that the second generation of their device, the more streamlined more streamlined heat exchange system, should be patented within 8 to 12 months. Then we're going to be looking into more of, as I said before, the regulatory phase, where we'll be looking at applying for IDE, working through clinical trials with university hospitals that we've targeted, and sort of working to figure out what the product should look like overall and its final stage, and showing what we need to do. We'll also be working on, we'll begin to look for our marketing department to, again, start our advertising, start to culture up the idea that we are the ones driving therapeutic hypothermia research, kind of remind people of that as we're going on. Then finally, we will be looking at, after we're done our clinical research, to kind of figure out where we're going to be manufacturing it. We can look for a number of small manufacturers to get our ongoing operations established of sort of a just-in-time timetable. We'll be looking at finishing up marketing research and, again, continuing on as we figure out from the hospitals that we're working with what kind of improvements they want to see. And we'll be looking to place our first order with our manufacturers and kind of sell our first device. And this development plan, we hope, puts us in a great position for this industry because of the fact that Galen Medical Technologies is the one looking to work with Dr. Becker, one of the huge figures in this field, in the field of therapeutic hypothermia, to show its effectiveness. And it's Galen Medical Technologies that is orchestrating the clinical research. And it's Galen Medical Technologies that has been working with hospitals to culture up the market. So as interest grows in therapeutic hypothermia in the next few years, people will think first of Galen Medical Technologies. And that is it. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
If you're successful in getting Galen technologies associated, like you mentioned, how would you combat, or would you worry about like your brand becoming the common word for like getting associated with the technology itself, and then losing sort of your differentiated, like with rollerblades versus inline skates and this kind of thing?
I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. If we have, in terms of, say, substitute products, there are maybe, I mentioned this a few weeks back, tissue and regrowth or drug therapies. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to say, if people think of therapeutic hypothermia, they think of Galen. That kind of, I feel like that's going to wipe out any other competition we have, and that will allow us to focus on sort of other ideas that other people are coming up with and counter them. Certainly we can't discount the other firms, or the other companies within our industry, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily such a bad thing. And obviously we'll copyright the names, so nobody's going to want to steal them.
Is this product already in preclinical trials or going through any of the phases now?
So their group is basically working, currently, Dr. Becker's group has been working on a device that he developed at the University of Chicago. They have been working on sort of trials regarding that, as far as like animal studies to show that therapeutic hypothermia is effective. They've actually, the device that we'll be licensing from them is radically different than what he was doing at the University of Chicago. So no, they haven't begun animal studies with those yet. But again, we're hoping that there's going to start them sometime within the next year or so when they start working on the second generation of the device, which is supposed to be used, which is intended to be used for animal studies.
Okay, Greg, your timing was right on, just a few seconds over. I almost interrupted you right at the beginning to tell you to step 2 steps closer, but I want you to do that when you're presenting to the panel, so we're not going back against the screen. Gestures are fine, everything's working. You didn't turn toward the screen any more than you had to, so you stayed engaged, which was good. It was your product development photos. There's that, I think you had a collage of a patient, yes, and then something. Yeah. They're not real. They don't come across as very clear. It's not at all clear what the middle picture is. You can kind of make out the patient in the bed and the saline bag, sure, but that didn't do a whole lot.
We're working on getting a more holistic.
The Galen logo is a little bit too big. It's taken up a little bit too much of your slide. It was just kind of barely perceptible down in the lower left corner. That'd be fine. Just don't have it be too overpowering. When you put up your timeline, that was way too much information at one time. It ends up being pretty distracting, even though you then, build it up over time. That just, we're trying to read and digest all of that. And unlike, Lloyd, who kind of built it up a line at a time.
I guess maybe it's not necessary to have all these on here if they're not even.
I think, well, you had there's some pretty important milestones, it was well thought out. I just question the timing and whether or not you had a very short amount of time from the completion of the FDA approval process till the time you're going to launch a product. And I don't know if that's very realistic or not.
This is yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think, you get back in touch with Howard, see, what he tells you in terms of realistic timelines. I mean, you have 36 months, maybe enough to get through the process. Whether or not you're going to be prepared soon enough to get into that process as quick as you think, and whether or not once it's over you can actually launch your product that fast is where I would, I have some questions maybe. You handled the Q&A very well, very concise answers right to the point. So I thought it was very well done. Okay, good job.